fifth Sunday of Lent, and next Sunday we go to Palm Sunday, and then we're finally in the Holy Week. We'll get to our time of Easter, but this is still our time to reflect and to remember what Lent is really all about. And I think that's what we've been discovering in our readings over the last several weeks. This morning our reading is going to be coming from John once again, and it'll be from John 11. And it too is one of those stories, those events of Jesus' life that only occurs here in the book of John. And some of you are familiar with it. It's Jesus' time. He has, as you know, he has some good friends by the name of Martha and Mary. We've read about them, their sisters, and their brother's name is Lazarus. And this morning we're going to find out what happens when something happens to Lazarus. And we read about the event where Jesus raises him from the dead. We've seen healings in other books. We've seen even children brought back from the dead. But this is going to be an important element. This is going to actually be, for John, the beginnings of that week where he enters into that time where he knows he's heading towards the cross. So again, let's start reading. I'd like to invite you, if you have your Bible or a Bible nearby, to take one and open it to John chapter 11. I'm going to be reading verses 1 through 27, and then I'm going to pick up the story again, starting again at verse 38, and finish at verse 45. Here now from the book of John, chapter 11, verse 1. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus. Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble, because they see the light of this world. But those who walk at night stumble, because the light is not in them. After saying this, he told them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right. Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought he was referring merely to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. For your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Thomas, who was called the twin, said to him, to his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out. His hands and feet were bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to him, "Unbind him and let him go." Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him. Amen. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life." When I was in seminary, Perkins at SMU has a lot of students, and a lot of students were a lot like I was, which means they were a little older, and they were on a second career, and many of them were already serving churches while they were attending seminary. Some of them, like I had families and other jobs, and so it was kind of a hectic time. Seminary was really great, but for some folks who were there, it was a little rough. And I remember this one young lady, and I don't remember her denomination because Perkins said all across the board of folks who were in different churches. And she said to me, I think during a time of a lot of stress, I think it was maybe finals or papers were due, probably all at the same time. She looked at me and said, I'm going to be so glad when I encounter the resurrection so that I don't have to put up with this anymore. I'll be so glad when I come to get into heaven and I won't have any more struggles, any more pain, any more rough times. And I thought about that. I thought, she's basically saying, I can't wait to get to heaven. I can't wait to die and be in the glory of God so that I don't have to experience this life anymore. And that's the good news. The good news really is when Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life," those who die will live. That's the promise. The promise of our living again, life through Christ after we die. We get to spend eternity with God in His glory in this place we call heaven. And I thought about that. There's a lot of ways to describe this resurrection, this idea of reward when we die. One of my favorite stories, for any of you probably heard it before, it's the woman who was, she found out she was going to have terminal cancer, and she was not going to be alive long, and she wanted to plan out her funeral with the pastor. So she went to his office and met with him, and they went through all the music and everything. And then when they thought they had finished, she was about to leave, and she said, "Oh, Pastor, there's one more thing. I want to be buried with a fork in my right hand." And he said, "Well, that's kind of odd, but okay, we'll honor that. We'll put a fork in your right hand." He said, "But I got to ask, why do you want a fork in your right hand?" She says, "Because I want everybody that goes by, that walks through there and sees me in my coffin holding a fork, I want you to tell them why. And the reason I want a fork in my right hand is that I've gone to a lot of dinners, a lot of fancy dinners, and what they always tell you when the main course is over is, hold on to your fork, because the best is yet to come. And when they ask you why I have a fork in my hand, I want you to tell them that I was ready for the best that was yet to come." That's the resurrection. That's the promise of living with God after we die. There's one more story I want to tell you of extreme belief in this idea of what this resurrection can be. Somewhere out in a country cemetery, somewhere in Louisiana, next to an old Episcopal church, somebody's grandmother is buried under a 115-year-old live oak tree. And her tombstone stands there with one word on it. the one word she asked her family to put on her tombstone. And that one word is waiting. You know, the idea that we wait, that we have a little time to kill before we can experience this resurrection of Jesus, before we can understand what it means to walk with God in His glory. But I've got to tell you, if that's the only part of this message, then we have a faith that's a little bit on the disappointing side. Because that's not everything that Jesus said, is it? Let me read you the rest of this very important quote. Yes, Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. That's the promise. That's the fork. That's the waiting. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. That's the next part. Resurrection itself, the Greek word translated as resurrection, literally means for someone to stand up again, to get back up. And the word life that he uses here, this Greek word that Jesus uses for life, is the life that we can encounter, the kind of life that we all had as human beings before Adam and Eve decided that they knew better. Before the aspect of sin, the life that they led walking in the garden with God, walking through the cool of the day, hand in hand, friend with friend. Jesus said, I am the resurrection. You can get back up and you can live this life again. And we often think that's what heaven's going to be like. And I believe it is. But the message for us today, the question we have today, is the same question he asked Martha. She said to Jesus, oh, I know my brother will rise again on the day of the final resurrection, meaning the day we all get to heaven. I know I'll see my brother again. And Jesus said, yes, but I am the resurrection. I am the life. And he said, do you believe in me? You see, that's the key for us today. That's the whole key of Lent, I think. Because Lent is that time where we're supposed to reevaluate our relationship with God, our walk with Christ. We acknowledge that we're human, that we're all mortals, and the good news that Jesus brings us on one hand is that yes, we're all going to die, but at some point, if we believe, we'll be with God forever. But the message for us today and this time of Lent this year is that if we believe, we can begin that life now. Waiting for what? The good news is we don't have to wait. Because Jesus says, if you believe, and that's the word I want to focus on. You know, we can believe a lot of things. We can believe in Santa Claus. We can believe in the Easter Bunny. I got to tell you, we believe in a lot of stuff. Judy and I happened to be at Hillcrest Hospital on Friday, and they have 6 floors on that hospital. And I personally believe that the elevator that runs up and down there will get you to the 6th floor. But believing that an elevator will do it is different than getting in the elevator, pushing the button 6, and riding to the top. You see, the word believe doesn't just mean believe in my mind. I know it's real. It's a word that means I'm going to totally commit to place my trust in this thing I say I believe in. Basically, it means we're all in on Jesus Christ being the resurrection. Because when we do that, we go from just thinking He's real to believing and committing our lives to Him. That's what Lent is for. It's to ask the same question that Jesus did. To look in the mirror and say, do you believe? Because if we do, even though we live, we will never die. We will not only live with God forever, we can start living with God right now. It takes a commitment. And I think that's what Lent gives us, an opportunity to say, you know, I had a commitment before, but I'm ready to start again. When you think about all the stories we've read in John so far, it was a Pharisee who wanted to know what the kingdom of God was like. Jesus said, all you got to do is be born from above. A woman who had a past, who wanted to be loved in spite of that. Jesus said, I don't care what you've done in the past. You're loved. You're saved. And then we had the man who was born blind. Doesn't matter what our excuses are, no matter what our born excuses are. Even though we're born in sin, we can be healed and see again. And today it says to us that even though we had all those things, we can know what life really is if we're willing to commit. You see, the season of Lent is an opportunity for us to sign again, to say, yes, Lord, I'm with you. Yes, I want to start walking with you again. I want that life, that garden life, where I walk with God every day. But it requires a commitment. You know, when you get married, you just don't sign a paper and say, well, someday I'm going to be married. It means you start being married right then. That's the kind of commitment we're looking for. That's the kind of commitment Jesus is talking about. And when he brought Lazarus out of that tomb, it is the same opportunity for us. No matter what tomb we're locked ourselves in here in this world, no matter what things and behavior and attitudes and the life we've chosen thanks to the world, no matter what tomb we're in, no matter what tomb that's got us stinking after 4 days or 20 years, Jesus wants us coming out of that right now because he is the resurrection. He is life. And all it requires from us is a little bit of commitment. You know, I've told you this story before, but I think it applies. It's the story of the chicken who wanted to make a special breakfast for the farmer. So he went to the pig and said, let's fix eggs and bacon for the farmer. And the pig said, that's fine and dandy for you. You're only involved in this breakfast. I'm having to commit to this breakfast. You see, that's what Jesus is saying, and that's what he wants from us during this season of Lent. The time for us just being involved with Jesus can be over. We can experience the resurrection right now. We can experience new life right now. But it's no longer going to be an involvement. It's going to require a commitment. We're going to have to say to Jesus Christ, you are the one I place my trust in. I no longer can depend just on myself. My hope lies in you. It's built on solid ground, not on shifting sand. That's what Lent can be for us, a time of reevaluation and another offer. Because listen, just listen. Even today, no matter what we've been up to, no matter how far we've strayed, I hear Jesus' voice. Can you? Because today, on the eve of the cross and the empty tomb, Jesus stands outside our tomb and says, come out and be free. I am the resurrection. He didn't say, I offer resurrection. He says, I am the resurrection. He didn't say, I give you life. He says, I am the life. We cannot just be involved. We have to commit to trust in Jesus Christ. We have an opportunity today to do just that. Come out and be free. Amen. I'd like to invite us down to our time